Hello everyone, this is a UFC 248 breakdown. The fight is between Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero. If you haven't seen my breakdown of Israel's fighting style, please go take a look at those. So let me start briefly with just talking about their styles in general. Israel is more of a feint. He feints a lot. He has an array of attacks, incredible attacks. So you don't see what he's coming with. Most people he's fighting with, he has a reach and a height advantage against. But even without that, he's probably the best technical striker in the UFC at the moment. I'll get back to Israel. Now with Yoel Romero, he's an Olympic silver medalist, and he's wrestled at a very, very high level. However, he doesn't always seem to use his wrestling. My theory is that he doesn't want to expend a lot of energy using the takedown and trying to keep people down. He's pretty good at taking people down. He is not really good at keeping people down. From what we've seen so far, Yoel seems to be a 3 round fighter. I'm not saying he hasn't been in 5 round fights. A lot of his recent fights have actually been 5 rounds. But what I mean by that is he seems to try to coast. Part of it is he tries to lull people to sleep. He doesn't do much. He'll just, move around, not throw punches, and then he explodes into space. I mentioned Israel has a height and a reach advantage. That's one of the things, or one of the ways that Yoel will be able to negate that, is he just lulls you into this false sense of calmness and like, oh, nothing is happening, and he explodes. And once he hits, just watching the way that people fall down, it seems like he hits like a truck or something, because not a lot of people take it and are able to keep standing. The other thing too is he's very good about absorbing pressure. He has really good reflexes, so he's very good at being able to slip people's attacks. But even when people hit, he just kind of rolls with it. I'm not sure if he has if he's been stopped before. I think he's been stopped once, but in a lot of his recent fights, the 2 fights against Robert Whittaker, the last fight against Borhachina, even the fight against Weidman, he was able to absorb pressure. He was able to absorb some attacks and just keep going. His last fight against Borhachina, especially, he took some huge hits and was just able to roll with it and I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so I think Yoel, when I say 3 round fighter, that's what I mean is that a lot of times he tries to conserve his energy. So if you look at the Robert Whittaker fight, for example, the second Robert Whittaker fight, actually let me start with the first Robert Whittaker fight. In the first Robert Whittaker fight, he tried to wrestle Robert early in the fight, spent a lot of energy, wasn't extremely successful in taking Robert down, wasn't successful really in taking Robert down. And then by the later rounds in the fight, you could see that he didn't have the same type of energy that he had earlier. In the second Robert Whittaker fight, what he did was he started very slow. He did almost nothing for the first 2 rounds in a way that was almost disturbing, and then comes out in the third round and just starts putting it on Robert. He hurt Robert in the third and I think in the fourth rounds. But he really finished stronger than he started. I suspect that in this fight he might try to do something similar. So coming back to Israel, one of the things Israel has said coming into this fight is obviously he asked for the fight. Nobody asked to fight Yoel Romero. Nobody at all. So he asked for the fight, and so he feels like he has something that others who have fought Yoel Romero recently don't have. I've never seen an easy fight against Yoel Romero. Even when people win, it's very, very controversial a lot of times as far as like who wins. Like people have him winning in all the fights that he's lost as well. So even though he's lost like 3 of his last, I think 4 fights, he's still like extremely dangerous, and he's still somebody that, people will struggle with when they get into the octagon with. So Israel calling him out and trying to take this fight is actually remarkable. Now, how exactly do I see this fight going? Okay, so if this fight goes 5 rounds to begin with, I think Israel wins. If he's standing at the end of this fight, I think he wins. And so the way that I see this going is there are a couple of ways that I see this playing out. The first one is, the way they fight, Israel usually tries to make reads on what you're doing in the first round. If you remember the Robert Whitaker fight, he was not super aggressive to begin with. He was trying to see what Robert wanted to do to him and how he wanted to attack him. And with about a minute and maybe 20 seconds to go in the fight, in the first round, Israel begins to put on the pressure on Robert. That culminates at the end with him knocking out knocking out Robert, and Robert was saved by the bell in that first round. But if you watch the sequence of events, he had, and again you can watch the breakdown video I did of that fight. He had started understanding what Robert wanted to do against him. Robert was trying to sprint or run into range, to explode into range to cover the distance because Israel had a reach advantage. And so he wanted to sprint into that range, start out with a jab, finish with a hook. And once Israel understood that, Israel has incredible reflexes, but he also has the ability to really arc and torque, like get into this matrix style defense where he, moves far back enough that he slips your punch and he's always in a position to counter strike. That's one of the things about Israel, is he's extremely good at, evading your strike, but also being in a position where his feet are still set and he can counter strike. I expect that in the first round we'll see very little of that against Yoel, because Yoel is extremely explosive, and especially in the early rounds he can do damage. That power goes with Yoel throughout the fight, but I think especially in the first rounds, when he sees Yoel trying to explode into space, I think he's going to try to get out of that area as quickly as possible, as opposed to trying to evade. We'll see with one of, in the Yoel versus Luke Rockhold fight, Yoel does this thing where he comes in with a jab. I think it was 2 jabs in a row, and that's almost to confuse Rockhold, and Rockhold is trying to duck. Meanwhile, what Yoel is really setting up is the hook that's coming in, and Rockhold doesn't even see it coming, and he knocks him out. Well, he hits him, falls down, and then the next punch knocks him out. So I see Izzy trying to just stay out of harm's way, make reads, trying to get Yoel's timing down, trying to see what Yoel wants to do against him. And because Yoel is also usually a slow starter, I don't expect a lot of action in that first round. I think that first round is going to be a lot of reaction. Yoel will, try to do what he does, where he lures him to sleep and tries to conserve energy. And then Israel is also going to be making reads on what Yoel is doing. So I don't expect like a very, busy first round from either one of these fighters. I think Israel is going to spend time trying to understand what Yoel wants to do, and Yoel is just going to try to conserve that energy and get one round into the fight. Now, I think from the second round onwards, I think we're going to start seeing some things happen. I think once Izzy starts to get down the timing of Yoel and sees what Yoel wants to do against him, I think he's going to start trying to, put together some attacks, probably from the outside. So I think he's going to try to utilize that reach advantage to keep Yoel on the outside. An array of kicks, an array of, body punches, body kicks. I don't think he's going to go head hunting, at least not in the first round. A lot of times when Israel knocks you out, it's a cumulative effect. So it's over time with him trying to do damage to you in segments. He does a lot of feinting. He doesn't commit to everything at 100% a lot of times. And what I mean by that is he'll throw a punch, but not put everything into it. He wants to land. So I think his best way of winning this fight is to outpoint Yoel Romero over 5 rounds, to beat him over 5 rounds, as opposed to trying to knock him out, because I don't think that's feasible. I think he could do enough damage over rounds that it does end up taking a toll on Yoel, but I don't think he will hit him with that one punch knockout starting at the beginning of the fight. So I think Israel is going to be very safe. And then I think once he gets into the later rounds, where Yoel has to become desperate and more aggressive because he's lost, say, the first 3 rounds, and now he knows he has to knock him out, I think you're going to see Israel begin to even pick him apart more, because now he can anticipate some of those attacks coming. It's going to be a very dangerous game because ultimately Yoel only needs one punch to be able to really knock you out. So essentially, for 25 minutes for the 5 rounds, Israel is going to have to stay on his toes. His level of concentration is going to have to be impeccable. And I think he can do it. I think obviously he's aware of how Romero fights. And so I think that's one of the things they're going to be training, is to stay on point for the entire 5 rounds. No breaks mentally, not even physically, just no breaks mentally in terms of understanding what's coming at you, being able to read how he's attacking you. The way that I see Romero responding to that, if he gets into the first 2-3 rounds and he understands that he's now down on the scorecards, I think what Romero does is he begins to rely on, those explosive attacks to cover distance. If he's unsuccessful with those, I think he starts to try to wrestle. So I think he starts to try to wrestle. And the reason why I think he starts to try to wrestle is, one, it allows him to be able to try to wear Israel down. Even if he just tries to hold him along the cage and just put his hands on him so that he can just keep him in place, try to take him down. I think he might start trying to do that in the third, probably the 4th round, if he sees that he's losing. So if he sees that he's losing, I think that's what he's going to go to. Now, one of the other things we've seen from Yoel is that once he gets to the point where he realizes he's losing, because he can take a shot, because he's very good at being able to absorb damage and still keep coming forward, I think what he does is he begins to try to walk Izzy down. And essentially he begins to walk him down and is like, it doesn't matter if you're going to hit me, kick me, I know that these punches are probably not going to knock me out. I'm just going to walk through all this and I'm going to explode into, essentially explode into an attack. So I expect that, in the 4th, 5th round, if he's not too worn down, he's going to just start walking Izzy down, trying to absorbing, these punches, kicks, whatever it is, and still just coming through, either to wrestle or to take Izzy down, to finish him, or to just begin to throw bombs. Now, Izzy's very good about being able to evade, like I told you, but he's also very good about managing space. So he doesn't allow people to kind of walk him down to cut him off. But I think it's one of those things where he has to always make sure he has his exit strategy in mind, because, again, in the 4th and 5th round, I see Yoel Romero beginning to say, you know what, I'm losing. I have to finish you if I have any chance of winning, and just walking him down and trying to, go through any punches and kicks that Izzy's throwing, and just, try to land something, really, 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 really dangerous. So that's the way I see this playing out for the most part. Again, if this goes 5 rounds, I just really don't see a way that Izzy loses this fight. I don't think Yoel has, 5 rounds worth of energy. I don't think he takes him down for any kind of successful long period of time. I think he can hold him in place. I don't see him holding him down for long. One of the things we've seen, even though I said Yoel is an Olympic silver medalist, is he's very good at taking people down. He's not very good at keeping them down. And in the last few fights, we barely ever see him do it. And when he does it, he usually does it at the end of the round. So if he thinks it's a close round, and he thinks if he takes you down for a few seconds, the judges might give it his way, he'll take you down. That's what we saw in the Bohachina fight, is he took him down at the very end of the round. I think it was literally took him down and then the bell went off, hoping that would be enough for him to win the round. So that's how I see the fight playing out. Again, please take a look at the breakdown of the Israel fights that I have. Please like, subscribe. If you have any comments, please put the comments. Thank you for watching this video.